I really appreciate you taking time to talk to me about Summering.
Thank you.
I was telling your people that this was one of the movies I was most looking forward to because you're one of my favorite filmmakers,
Thank you.
and this to me looks like sort of a change of pace for you. Not the kind of thing I was expecting to see from you at Sundance. So, talk to me a little bit about where the idea for Summering came from.
Yeah. I mean, I think, the shortest answer is I became a parent, and
That'll do it.
that'll do it. And I think like my perspective on a lot of sort of conversations shifted. And I think I found myself, a lot of the conversations. I mean, and it's especially being a parent to a daughter. I found myself, um, recognizing that when I was a kid, there were the films that I gravitated towards, or the stories that I gravitated towards, that were coming of age stories about friendship, stories about, first brushes with death, with loss, whatever it was. Like Stand By Me being an iconic one, obviously in America in the 80s. There were enough stories where I could see some version maybe of myself on screen, but it was a recognition once I became a parent, to a daughter, that I realized, well, my sister, who's hugely influential on me, that my mother as well, my wife, my daughter, that none of them really enjoyed that same luxury. I think my sister, is 5 years older than me. I think oftentimes, and I'm totally generalizing, but she would have to see a story about some of those themes that I mentioned and project herself onto the male characters, or maybe there was a sister or a girl down the street, whatever it was. And I think I had a real desire to tell a story about the emotional inner lives of young people, and centered in a female experience that's about their hopes, their fears, their anxieties, their relationship to change, death, all of the things about. I mean, the truth is, like, I approached it in the way that I would approach any film. This is a film that deals with death, suicide, addiction, like all that, like things falling apart, whether that's friendship or marriages. It's all there. It's just rooted in the experience of characters who are 12 years old. There's also their parents. So it's, a multi-generational story. It's all of the issues that have been in everything I've kind of, I didn't realize this till after the fact, but I was like, these are kind of the same issues that I'm always interested in. I mean, I'm interested in families, and I'm interested in, people and their hopes, their fears, and their sort of their brokenness that makes them human, all of those things. And I think for whatever reason, there's not as many stories that dignify the emotional inner lives of characters who happen to just be kids in America as there are in other countries. You go to other countries, I mean, a lot of my favorite filmmakers, whether it's Ozu or Truffaut or Kiarostami, or you think of like the Apu films in India, these are like canonical films, that are about the emotional inner lives of characters, and there's a dignity to them. And the fact that they happen to be a kid doesn't change the approach. I think young people and the elderly tend to get excluded from a lot of stories. Like, we tend to focus most of our stories, maybe for very obvious reasons, on people in this safe, youngish middle age. And so that's really where it came from, was to make something that was sort of inspired by a desire to make a movie that should have existed when my mom was a kid, or my sister, or my wife, but that hopefully now does for my daughter.
That's interesting. The movie, it's very grounded in a lot of ways. Like you're talking about the emotions and the inner feelings for all these characters, not just the young girls, but their moms as well. But it also includes some fantastical elements as well that are kind of blended in there. Talk to me about where that came from, and what made you want to include those as part of, like I said, this very grounded story. I felt like.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, to me, like, there is such a fascinating time in all of our development, which happens. I mean, I think all times in our life are interesting, but there's a very specific time when you're like 11, 12 years old, maybe on the cusp of adolescence. You're not quite a teenager yet. You're a tween, whatever it is. You're about to go into middle school. When, if you take, and again, I'm generalizing, but if you take a group of friends, 3 or 4 kids, some of them are definitely into the games of childhood, make believe stuff, full imaginative things. And maybe they've never actually experienced death before, if they're lucky. Maybe they haven't, maybe some have. For some kids that age, their greatest fear is losing their best friends. For some of them, that feels more real than the fear of death.
Yeah.
It's a privilege to live that experience. It wasn't my experience. Like, I experienced death a lot younger than that, but a lot of my friends didn't until they were a lot older. And by the time you are in 6th, 7th grade, which can be a emotionally terrorizing horror film of an experience, you're on a sprint to adolescence where it's basically like adult cosplay in the worst way. And so what really interested me was the way that when we are still, there's a maturity and sophistication, I think, to kids that are this age, but they still use imagination to process trauma in a way that someone my age might not. I think artists still will use surrealism and imagination to process trauma, and I think every child is an artist, just like every kid actually is a great improviser. But something for a lot of people, I don't mean to generalize, but a lot of people in adolescence and then into adulthood gets snuffed out, like that spark of being willing to yes and the universe or manifest with the tools of imagination a way to engage with things like the way your childhood home can feel like a haunted house, and whether that's manifested in a boogeyman who follows you down the street, who might be a surrogate for someone who's actually died, or an absent father, or whatever, the real stuff of being in the adult world. And the thing is, kids are in the adult world too, and everything seeps into the groundwater of the consciousness of kids. It's just, I think, the wishful thinking or magical thinking that a lot of adults have, that kids aren't picking it all up. They really are.
Talk to me a little bit about the casting. Yeah, the main foursome are mostly new faces. Their mothers played by a little bit more well-known actresses, Lake Bell, Megan Mullally, and Sarah Cooper. I think this will be the first time many people will see her act in front of the camera, and when she's not doing Donald Trump or something. This will be a first for them. But talk to me about the casting of the main foursome and of their mothers as well.
Yeah, I work generally with the same casting director. Her name's Avi Kaufman. She's amazing. She's cast films that I love, from everyone from like Michael Mann and Ang Lee to Steven Spielberg, but she's also done amazing work in casting children. I'm specifically thinking of a Jim Sheridan movie from a number of years ago called In America, which I think was when I first met her, around the time that she had done that. But she's a genius. And, I think the biggest thing was that I wanted these kids to feel like they were friends, and I'm stating such obvious things, but I wanted to enjoy looking at them and find them interesting. Like,
that's a big deal, though. That's a big deal. It's not easy to get chemistry. So if they don't feel like friends, the whole movie doesn't work, right?
Exactly. And they have to be, to me, just like interesting people. There really is I hate the term child actor, and I don't think these are child actors. I think these are actors who happen to be young. Just like I don't think there's quote unquote elderly actors. I think there's just actors who are a different age, But to me, I always, when I'm working with younger actors, a lot of it just comes from conversation in the audition process, and maybe improv, to just see, does their imagination inspire me? Do I think they're going to grow up to be an interesting person? Do I find them compelling? Do I find them weird, smart? Do they have a specific point of view? Can they serve the character and then totally make it their own? It's the same way, like, not to be self-referential, but thinking like with Spectacular Now, like meeting with like Caitlin Dever or like Brie Larson or Shailene Woodley or whomever, it was like, wow, these people have brilliant imaginations. So that's really, where it came from. And while I feel young at heart and I have children, my wife works at a middle school, high school. A lot of my friends have kids. While I'm around a lot of kids the age of these characters, these kids definitely became, and my co-writer on this, Ben Percy, has a daughter this age. Like, these kids definitely became the experts on these characters. I wanted them to have full agency and full ownership of them. And then once we had the kids, then it was like, now we created a friend group, and we put them together on Zoom like this, and had them, before they were fully cast, like talk to them, had them sort of I learned about them. Like, would you say this? Would you do this? Like, this might seem crazy, but what would you, everything, like everything, even the like, hey, I'm a dumb old guy. Tell me tell me the best thing about TikTok versus like Instagram or whatever it is. Like you can laugh at me, but just talk to me.
Yeah.
All of that. It was so much fun. And I approach it from a place of like humility and wanting them to put their lives into this and knowing there's a lot that I don't know. And with the adults, it was, let's find people that could believably be their moms and that are compelling. I mean, Megan Mullally, who's in it, had been in Smashed. She had a role in that along with her husband, Nick Offerman. And I loved working with her. And she's just one of the most amazing artists I know. And like one of the funniest humans on earth. And also just a really fantastic dramatic actor. Lake Bell is like a phenomenal storyteller. She's like such a great actor and a great writer director. She's like a force of nature. Ashley Madekwe is a genius actor. She auditioned for it and it was one of the most amazing auditions I'd ever seen in my life. I was like, oh my, I didn't realize she was actually British when she auditioned. I was like, who is she? And then I was like, wait, that always happens, right? It's such a cliche, but I was like, wait, she's British? And then Sarah Cooper, I did not know until 2020 when she helped me get through like COVID year one. Like those like Donald Trump videos you're talking about, like it's the past couple of years have been trying for everybody, and especially for, I think for people with families with young kids trying to make their way through it. Sarah Cooper made me laugh so much in 2020. Like she's such an absolute genius. Like she was like, her existence and her art was a gift to me and my wife, my family. And I was like, I want to meet her. I want to work with her in any way. So I was so thrilled that she would play this role. She's the best.
So your film is debuting at Sundance. Talk to me a little bit about how you feel about debuting it at the festival, and what are you hoping people will take away from the film when they see it?
I mean, Sundance is always like such a thrill. I mean, because I was going to say a teenage film nerd, but I was like a 10-year-old movie nerd, 11-year-old movie nerd. I was like the age of these kids. I was like movie nerd. It was just like endlessly annoying the people at Blockbuster Video and local video stores. Like
you had a few movies debut at Sundance. I know I saw Spectacular Now at Sundance, but you've had Smashed was here as well, right? And
10 years ago now, I just realized it was 10 premiered in 2012, which is wild. I was like, oh my God, 10 years. Yeah. But I mean, even when I was a kid, like Sundance, not that I ever went to Sundance as a kid, but I started to learn that there were movies that played at Sundance, like, I mean, the big ones when, like Sex, Lies and Videotape, Clerks, all those things that came out of there. And the idea of Sundance became this sort of conceptual space of a place that curated and supported very specific visions, like voices that sort of were either weirder or darker or more funny or more empathetic or whatever it is, more inclusive than a lot of what was being made by like big studio movies. And I just sought out movies like on video just because they had played at Sundance, And then when I got into college and then film school, yeah, I mean, the idea of having a film play at Sundance was a dream. It felt like affirmation, that you were part of a cultural conversation. And so it's deeply meaningful. It's a real point of pride and gratitude that I have to have had numerous films play there. So I'm so thrilled. And, what I hope that audiences take away from the film, the film, I think is it's a film for multiple generations. I mean, most of my favorite films, I'm thinking of like whether it's films by Ozu or Killer of Sheep or Spike Lee film or Pickett, are like, you see movies with parents and kids and old people and everyone on the block, they're all kind of hanging out. And just because they're old people or young people, I mean, you think of Pixar, like the same people that made Up made Inside Out. One's a young protagonist, one's old, but it's not, one isn't less than, they're equally thoughtful, imaginative, empathetic. So my hope is that people, a lot of the conversations that I realize that I've had over the past couple of years with my kids, that they probably would have asked in any given year, but especially the past couple of years when they look me in the eye and I'm taking them to school in their mask, or I'm going off to work in my mask, and they're like, are you going to be okay? Am I going to be okay? Is everything good? You're not going to get sick, are you? Is everything going to go back to normal? Like, they're so young. They don't even, I have a 3-year-old. He doesn't know whatever normal is. Like, all of those conversations kind of worked their way into this film. This is a film about being young, being afraid of the future, being afraid of losing the people that you love, and then encountering loss, real loss, and wondering if it's your problem, like what your responsibility is to yourself, to your friends, to your family, to a perfect stranger. Do you have a duty? So I hope it sparks conversations, thoughtful conversations, and that I hope that ultimately, like, the movie feels full of love and that it's hopeful.
Well, James, this has been fantastic, man. I really appreciate you taking time to talk with me. Good
Thank you.
luck to you at Sundance this year, and I hope to find out more about what you're going to be doing next, man. And hope I get to talk to you about that too. So,
In
thanks.
person, please, in person.
Yes, in person. Let's do it. All right, man.
All
Thanks
right.
a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Travis. All right, take care. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for checking out the show. If you like what we're laying down, please subscribe to our channel and click the bell to receive notifications for all of our latest stuff.